From Atlanta News First Plus, this is Sports Tonight.
Welcome on a very chilly Wednesday here to Sports Tonight. I'm sports producer Scott Pennyman, and introduce yourself, Lee, the great Lee Smith, right?
The great Lee Smith. Don't play for the Cardinals, but I'm still a Lee Smith.
The famous closer. He was a great closer. I saw him growing up, just watching him a lot. But I think I saw him with the Angels. I remember he was a very, very good. When Lee Smith came in, the game was over.
You knew it was shut down.
But it's a little different today because with this Lee Smith here, we're just starting, right?
We are. We're just starting. We're going to start talking about a whole lot of Atlanta sports.
Hold on,
who we got first?
So let's talk about the Falcons first, right? I mean, obviously, This has been a busy week with the coaching search and everything. They've been interviewing candidates left and right today. Well, not much today, but yesterday there was news that came out that they talked about, Bill Belichick. They talked to Bill Belichick and Jim Harbaugh. Well, today it came out. Reports are from NFL insiders that it's pretty much Bill Belichick's job to lose, right? They say he's the clear favorite to be the next head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. I guess their meeting went well this week with Arthur Blank and the people with the team and everything, and maybe a small indication that, I don't know, I'm not saying Bill's on the way, right? I'm not saying that.
Yeah,
but
no, I wouldn't say that just yet.
I wouldn't say that just yet. However, I think a minor indication of what could be ahead was that for all last week, the Falcons would not give teams permission to talk to their defensive coordinator, Ryan Nielsen.
Yep.
Today, they granted teams permission, and they granted Ryan permission to seek another opportunity. When you hear that, does that tell you anything?
I mean, it should, right? You're going to have a defensive head coach, and you're going to have, or at least you're going to have a head coach, and a head coach is going to bring in a defensive coordinator that already knows who's going to be there with him. So then you would think that the next domino would be that you can give your current defensive coordinator permission to talk to other teams.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I wonder who it is, though.
Well, I mean, I think when you think about Bill, and for me last week when I was doing the show with Bailey, for me I said he wasn't really my ideal candidate. Doesn't really matter what I think because I don't own the Falcons. But if I was thinking, I don't own the Falcons. I'm a few $1 billion short, But when you think,
aren't we all?
Yeah.
Aren't we all?
But when you think about the direction of the Falcons, though, and where they're at, and sort of where they're at as a team, I was more so thinking of an offensive mind. I said my choice would have been Eric Bieniemy. Of course, I don't even think he's even been a candidate, right? But even if it wasn't somebody like Eric Bieniemy, just someone with an offensive mind that knows how to allocate the weapons that they have on offense. You spent the last 3 years drafting offensive weapons. You spent the last 3 years drafting Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson. We've talked at nauseum about that, right? Yep. So I thought this past year with Arthur Smith, they weren't really they didn't do a good job of using those weapons. They didn't do a good job of getting the ball in those guys' hands. So I thought they bring in an offensive coach, more offensively, sort of savvy coach to be able to use those weapons. But this is the way it always goes, right? It seems like when a team hires an offensive coach, that was Arthur Smith. He was a guy who's running for his offense. If things don't go right, they normally go to a defensive guy. So it makes sense, right?
It does make sense. And I think, obviously, Bill Belichick, if he does, in fact, come to town, he adds a whole lot of continuity. A whole lot of leadership.
A little bit.
Now, you might not agree with how he does it, but at least you know he's the guy in charge, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Everybody below him pretty much knows the deal, too, so everybody's in lockstep. Now, his last couple of years of the Patriots, though, haven't been good. They've been pretty abysmal.
Yeah, and I think,
especially on the offensive side of the ball.
And I agree with that. And I think part of the issue is you have to ask yourself, if you're Arthur Blank and the people who run the Falcons, is Bill Belichick still able to communicate with the young players of today the way he used to be able to, right? I mean, because in the early 2000s, it's pretty much known all the way around how the Patriots run their business. It was the Patriot way. It was uniform. This is how we go about business. This is how we play. This is how we practice. This is how we go about dealing with the media. It was the Patriot way. That's how they did things, and that's just how it was. It kind of became noteworthy the last few years since Tom Brady left that way kind of became stale because the newer players, the young 20, 23, 24, 25-year-old players, they don't really respond to that as well, right? I mean, they respond to a different kind of coach. When you think about guys like Sean McVay, sort of younger coaches like that
Kyle Shanahan,
right? Just younger guys that are able to
Mike McDaniel,
right, McDaniel, younger coaches that are able to reach some of the younger kids. And so my biggest question is Bill Belichick. It's not even a question about his football ability, because Bill Belichick has forgotten more about football than I will ever know, right? Than any of us will ever know.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, from a communication standpoint, at 72, well, he'll be 72 this season, at 71 years old, is he able to communicate with the younger players the way he used to be able to?
I don't think so. But the guy wins. So that's really what it comes down to. Guy wins, and guess what? He's only, how many games is he short of getting the all-time record from Don Shula?
Like 14 or 15 games.
Yeah, come on. So he wants that record. It's so funny, and I heard somebody making a great point the other day. They were talking about Bill Belichick always being like a team-oriented, everybody over I kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And then they brought up, they're like, well, yeah, of course he wants to keep coaching. He wants to get that record for himself.
Well, it can't just be about that, right? I mean, he can't.
Well, no, but I mean, could be the biggest reason though. I mean, he don't need money. He doesn't need titles. He's got plenty of rings.
Well, look, I mean,
why not just retire now?
Yeah, but when you look at it,
you're going to come to Atlanta, completely different division, conference, weather, everything, culture, literally everything.
Now, look, one thing we also got to talk about, though, Bill Belichick's record with Tom Brady and without Tom Brady, totally different. He's a totally different coach with Tom Brady and without Tom Brady.
He did have a season where he had 11 wins with Matt Castle.
He did. Remember, they fell short of the playoffs that year because that was a year where everybody was really good, So
yeah.
And then a couple years ago, they did make the playoffs with Mac Jones, and then Mac Jones just sort of plummeted after that, right? So, I just don't know if that Patriot way. I mean, it seems pretty apparent though from what we saw, what we've seen the last 3 years.
It's over.
Right.
Yeah.
That Patriot way was
the old way is not working anymore. You gotta adapt and overcome.
Right. So I think if you do bring in Bill Belichick, I think a lot is about who are going to be his assistants, right? I mean, who are going to be some of those coaches. I mean, he'll probably bring in McDaniel, right, as his offensive coordinator. That's what Josh McDaniel. That's who he always has as his coordinator.
You think so?
Seems like. I mean, probably. I mean, McDaniel's he's unemployed. He's not going to be a head coach again.
Remember a couple of years ago where he took a head coaching job somewhere, and then he turned it down just to come back.
Oh,
and
the
be
Colts.
The OC. Yeah, that's right. The Colts.
Yeah, so
that's crazy, man.
Right, I mean that was right. So he burned those bridges, and then he didn't do very well as a head coach. So he's probably done with his head coaching opportunities.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can see him coming with Bill Belichick and maybe being the guy who gets his quarterback together. And look, I understand that once again, but I just don't know. I think the issue for me is the age thing, and I don't want to be accused of age discrimination, right? But I think it's a thing. If there's a 71-year-old head coach, can he still communicate with 22 and 23 and 24-year-olds? I mean,
that's hard, man.
Your guy Nick Saban, right? I mean, that's Bill Belichick's. That's one of his very best friends. Is that something that he had trouble with too towards the end of his time at Alabama? I don't know.
I don't know if it was much as communication with them as much as it was
dealing with the changing times.
Yes, the NIL and portal, but yeah.
But times are changing, right? Times are changing. This is a different world. This is a different world than we lived in in 2020, 2001 when Belichick started his reign with the Patriots and he started the Patriot way. You can't talk to these 22 and 23 and 24-year-old kids. You can't assume that they're just going to do their job, which was the Patriots motto, right, all those years, right? Like Gerard Mayo said today, well, we'll get to that a little bit in a little bit in this press conference, but one thing that he sort of hit on is he says, the way it used to be, you'd give players walked in, they knew, you give them an assignment, they did their job, and it was what it was. Well, nowadays, guys want to know, why are we doing this? Why are we, how
process, a whole process.
Right, there's a process, and you first have to be able to communicate with them before they'll do what you need them to do. So it's a different sort of player nowadays. So I guess that's my question, right? So that leads me to the second candidate, Jim Harbaugh. Who they also interviewed.
So is this like a 1A, 1B kind of thing?
Yeah, that's kind of where it's at. So Jim Harbaugh, they also talked to him. He's probably like the second hottest candidate that's available. How do you feel about him?
I mean, he's definitely, if not the hottest coach out there now, he's got to be the hottest second hottest coach out there as far as coming off that title with Michigan.
Yeah.
15-0. Didn't think a whole lot of people didn't think it was
This is true.
It was doable to slay the SEC giant. They slayed the SEC giant. They won the championship. 15-0. They've done all the things that they could possibly do this year. So it makes sense for him to be a top head coach candidate in the NFL now, since he's already gotten history of taking the 49ers to 3 NFC championships?
Yeah, they went 3 straight years, I believe, to the
Yeah.
NFC championship game, and now he's won
What
a title
his
at
first
Michigan.
year? He was like 13 and I want to think 13-3, 13-4.
Yeah. And
I can't remember. I think
they're
he
really
got-
good. He turned them around like really fast.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, so
And it wasn't expected at all. Like, I mean, nobody's expected to do that. It was kind of crazy. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he's a hot commodity right now. And look, man, you got to cash in when you can.
look, I think when you're thinking about somebody like Harbaugh, though, I think what you're looking at here is no matter who the coach is, whether it's Jim Harbaugh or Bill Belichick, they have to first understand what they're going to do at the quarterback position, right? So I think when you think about Harbaugh, remember Alex Smith when he was in San Francisco? When
Yeah.
Alex Smith has struggled for some years
Yeah.
in San Francisco. Jim Harbaugh takes the 49ers over, and Alex Smith gets his career right. So you wonder is maybe, some of their existing quarterbacks like Des Ridder, you know what I'm saying? Is that a situation where Harbaugh feels like he can come in and fix Ridder and maybe get him to be what he needs him to be, and maybe they don't need a new quarterback? I don't know. That's an interesting thing because
Yeah.
he's a guy I think Harbaugh feels like he can fix guys, or is he going to draft this guy?
He's probably
from
going to
Michigan.
look. Whoever's going to be the coach of this next team they're going to draft a quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think there's any scenario where they don't draft a quarterback in the first round.
Okay. Yeah,
Unless they trade for Justin Fields, maybe. That's it.
You're
I'm not saying
it.
it should happen. I'm just saying maybe.
Look, we're gonna get to that part
I don't
about
know.
Justin Fields. All right, we're
I
gonna.
know.
First off, like I said,
Hey, I gave you a little segue right there. I gave you a perfect little transition.
It's a little segue, but first, though, before we talk about Justin Fields, before we get there, we're going to get there, all right? But before we talk about Justin Fields, we've been talking about the Falcons and their search for a new head coach.
Yeah.
The Patriots, they found their new head coach. Obviously, he was the guy who replaced Bill Belichick there. Gerard Mayo, the new head coach of the 37-year-old Gerard Mayo. Boy, time goes fast.
That's crazy,
I remember when
37.
Remember when he was playing?
I mean,
He's an SEC guy, went to Tennessee.
I know. It feels like it's been a while,
Right.
but still 37. That's surprising.
He's a
The
young coach,
Patriots,
and he's the new coach of the Patriots.
37-year-old.
He was introduced today with Bob Kraft, with owner Bob Kraft, as a new head coach of the Patriots. But I guess you could say new, but he's been there under Belichick for some years, so
Yeah.
he knows the Patriot way. He knows the system. He talked to the media today in his introductory press conference. So let's check a little bit of that out to see what old Gerard was talking about today.
Thunder talked about was I had always been a coach in his mind. I would say I'm a huge believer in just developing people, whether it's on the football field, whether it's off the football field, in the media world, in business. My calling is to be a teacher and to develop people and help them see pretty much what they don't want to see, but they need to see. So my job has always been that is my calling. Becoming a Patriot, it's never really felt like a job. When I first got here in 2008, I was a first-round draft pick. 2007, you know the season, 2007. Don't worry about that one. But I come into an organization where the culture was established, the people, not only the players, but the people that worked around the building. And I was like, man, maybe I'm the missing piece, right? Maybe I'm the missing piece. So I was drafted in 2008, and then the first game of the season, Tom Brady gets hurt. He's out for the year. Most people wrote us off that season, but that's when I really had an opportunity to see the culture at work. Many people, they look at culture as a retrospective way of either validating success or validating a losing season. I would say here the culture starts at the top. Mr. Kraft and the family starts at the top, but it also has to permeate throughout the organization. And I've always tried to carry that flag for the Kraft family. As he's told you, look, these guys win at a lot. They win at a lot. And I love being here. I took a break. I went to Optum. I needed a break from Bill. I went to Optum for about 4 years. And I came back. And one thing I came back with, I learned a lot at Optum. Larry Renfro, Mike Mateo, those guys. I learned a lot at Optum about diversity, right? About diversity and inclusion. And you better believe it. Being the first black coach here in New England means a lot to me. But those guys taught me you have to take ideas from other people, black, white, green, yellow, it really doesn't matter. Old, young. One thing you'll notice about me in our interaction as we continue to go is I don't like echo chambers. I want people around me that are going to question my ideas or question the way we have done things in the past. Because realistically, this game's a lot different than when I was drafted in 2008. At the same time, that's why I try to spend so much time in developing young men and young women so they know I don't want to teach them what to think. I want to teach them how to think. And once we get to that point, I think we can get back to where we need to be at the top. And I'm an open book. I'm honored. I'm ready to go. And I'm excited to be the next head coach of the Patriots.
We'll start with Mike Reese here in the front row.
This question is for Robert. There's going to come a time when you have to turn in a draft card and make a pick official or make a signing official. Who will have the final say on those decisions?
Yeah, well, this is a day we want to celebrate Gerard taking this position. What we know, we have a lot of people internally who have had a chance to train and learn under the greatest coach of all time, and a man whose football intellect is very special. So in the short term, we're looking for collaboration as our team has a tremendous opportunity to position itself right, given our salary cap space, and we've never drafted. In my 30 years of ownership, we've never been drafting as low as we're drafting. So we're counting on our internal people, whom we're still learning and evaluating. So we're going to let that evolve and develop. And before the key decisions have to be made, we will appoint someone. And at the same time, we'll probably start doing interviews and looking at people from the outside. But my bias has always been, in all our family companies, to try to develop a culture from within where we understand one another. I'll just give you a little factoid. In the 30 years that we've owned the team, today, so it's really 31, this is the third coach that our family has hired. In that period, there have been 244 coaches hired in the NFL, which means an average of roughly 8 coaches per team, which means there's a turnover every 3.5 years in the teams. We like to get continuity in our company, get the most competent people, and then try to build stability. And so before we just rush and hire people, we want to understand what we have internally. It's a long answer, but an important question.
This question is for Gerard. Gerard, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's been reported in recent days you've set up interviews for a defensive coordinator position and special teams coordinator position. I'm curious if you'll open a search for an offensive coordinator, and if so, what traits and experience will you prioritize?
That's a great question. I would say, just like Thunder alluded to, everything's still under consideration. Obviously, the staff that I've been working with isn't the staff that I've chosen, but everything's under evaluation. One thing I would say with all of my coaches, the number one thing is developing people. And with this generation, I mean, back when I first started playing, most of the time guys, coach would say something and guys would do it. I think with this generation, it's about, you have to show them that you care about them before you get into, competency as far as X's and O's are concerned. And that's one thing I feel like with all my coaches, they should know the players. They should know their room better than I do. They're closer to those guys, and they have that day-to-day interaction. But to me, whether we're talking offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, all that stuff is under eval. And my number one thing is I want to bring in developers. Just want to thank my family, first and foremost.
Lee, this is what I was talking about. See, right before we went to Gerard Mayo, I talked about how this is a different generation of youngsters, right? That's part of the reason why Gerard Mayo is sitting there right next to Bob Kraft and not Bill Belichick, because I think that's something that Bill Belichick has struggled with in recent years is, and I guess it's hard, right? When you had success with something for so long, when you've done something for so long and it's worked for so long, it's hard to change. It's probably hard to change, right? So that Patriot way was probably hard to change, do your job and everything the way they did it. But like Coach Mayo said, in this day and age, which is even different from when he played, you have to collaborate more with your players. You have to explain to them why something works more. You have to work with them more than just talk at them. And that's where I'm not sure if Bill Belichick is there yet.
Well, there's a huge age gap, and I think that's the biggest reason.
Big age gap, yeah.
I think they trust Gerard with it because he's been there. He's literally walked that place.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure he was a lifelong Patriot. I don't think he played anywhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, who else could better understand,
how they do things?
I mean, come on.
Hey, so, we talked about before, no matter who that new head coach is going to be, whether it's Harbaugh, whether it's Belichick, or whether it's somebody else, they're going to need a quarterback, right?
Yep.
So if you listen to Mel Kiper Jr., ESPN draft analyst, he seems to think that the Bears can get a first-round pick in exchange for Justin Fields.
Can they?
I don't know. You tell me.
It's pretty steep asking price. I'd say maybe a second, or even 2 seconds.
Yeah.
In separate years, but I don't think I would make that move for a first-round pick. No.
That's kind of where I'm at. I think when you look at Justin Fields, he's never even thrown, I think, more than 17 touchdown passes in a season. He has a high number of interceptions in comparison with the amount of touchdown passes that he's thrown. And let's just be real. If you acquire Justin Fields right now, you're acquiring Justin Fields for what you think he can be, right? Because you really haven't seen a lot of evidence of it in Chicago. You've seen spurts where, when you see the ability, you see the arm, you see the ability with his legs, and you go, if he was with the right offensive mind, maybe he can really be something. But you're not going by anything tangible that you've seen on the field, because from a production standpoint and as a passer, the production just hasn't been there, right? And even last year when they said, okay, we need to get more weapons around Justin, they got DJ Moore from the Panthers. They've gotten a couple different offensive coordinators. They've been through a couple different head coaches, and you see the same Justin Fields, right? So it sort of makes you wonder at this point, is it Justin, or is it the fact that the things aren't around him right? And I don't mind saying it in Chicago, they're not a model organization, right? So I'm not saying that they've done everything correct either, but look at the difference. Look at another guy from Ohio State, C.J. Stroud, gets to a Texans team. They've struggled for years after Deshaun Watson left, and in one season, D'Amico Ryans is the head coach, but more so C.J. Stroud comes in and elevates that team to a level they haven't seen in years. And we haven't seen Justin Fields do that. So I think when you look at those two guys, when you look at a guy who has changed an organization and a guy who hasn't, Justin Fields, it really just makes you wonder, is it more Justin than it is the organization?
So here you go.
Yeah.
2023, Justin Fields had 16 touchdowns passing.
That's not enough.
16 passing touchdowns and 9 picks.
That's not that good of a ratio.
16-9.
Yeah.
And he added 4 scores on the ground. So 20 and 9.
Well, it's
just
never
not
been a
enough.
question if he can run. I mean,
That's just not enough, man.
Right.
That's not enough.
right. I mean, it's never been a question whether he can run. Like, we know that he can do things with his legs. The question has been, can he progress as a passer? And at this point, we haven't seen it. We're giving him the benefit of the doubt because I think people like Justin, and I think they're willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But we haven't seen the passing production on the field to know that he can, to know enough to be able to give up a first-round pick.
Right.
I mean, that's
first
just
round
nuts.
pick. That's
yeah.
And especially when you have a chance, you can actually go get a Caleb Williams.
Right. Or
you can go get
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah. I don't know how high they would be on Drake May.
Yeah.
Goodness. I mean, even I guess Penix could make a run up here. I'm not saying they should, but
yeah, that's a little too risky right now.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, that's
But still, when you could potentially go up to number 1, 2, 3,
Right.
even 4,
doesn't seem worth it.
you might as well just go ahead and try and do it.
Right. Hey, let's talk some NFL playoffs before we get up out of here. NFL playoffs right now. What's your biggest surprises so far, in your opinion?
The Packers absolutely blasting the Cowboys at Jerry's World. So
That's crazy, isn't it?
that was insane. I didn't think Jordan Love had it in him, but you know what? That defense gave him 2 pick sixes.
Yeah.
So Packers are my biggest surprise, and I'm sure I know who you're going to say.
Well, this has been Jordan Love's coming out party, right? So I definitely respect
been.
Jordan Love.
It has been.
Look, and that's kind of crazy, right? I mean, when you think about the Packers organization, they've
You
gone
go
from Brett Favre
to
to Aaron Rodgers to now.
Jordan
Look, they've got the formula, right? I mean,
Hey.
draft a quarterback before you even need one. Let him sit for a few years behind a Hall of Famer, and then he becomes a Hall of Famer, right?
How many teams can say that they've had 2 back-to-back Hall of Famers,
yeah,
and now they've got the third guy,
a really good start.
who in his first year starting hasn't been in a playoff game.
He has better numbers than those other 2 guys.
Yeah, they've got one more playoff game than playoff win than the Falcons have had in the last 6 years.
Right. Hey, speaking of playoff wins, though, too, that brings me to my choice, Baker Mayfield, right?
Yep.
So Baker Mayfield just led his second team that he's been with to a playoff win, and he played great in eliminating the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles. And it just really – I talked about this last week. It just really baffles me about Baker Mayfield when you think about him because there's been worse quarterbacks than Baker Mayfield that have secured long-term contracts, at least guys who are worse in my opinion.
He's about to get paid.
Right. Guys like Derek Carr, guys like Kyler Murray. I don't think those guys are necessarily better than Baker Mayfield, right? And those guys have secured long-term contracts, but Baker Mayfield is now on his second team looking for a deal. And I was going back and forth with a lot of people on social media today. Just kind of, I'll make this quick because we only have a couple minutes left.
Cleveland fan.
Yeah,
That's
right. I'm a Cleveland fan, right? So there's always huge fights. Baker Mayfield is one of the most polarizing people in the history of Cleveland sports because most people either like him or you hate him, right? So, but I think one thing that you can't deny is the fact that he's been a quality quarterback for a couple years. He goes to Tampa Bay now, leads them to a playoff win. And so I tell my people in Cleveland, I say, I just wonder if there's a little bit of buyer's remorse right now, right? Because Deshaun Watson has only played 2 games. He's only played 12 games in 2 seasons. And you have Baker Mayfield now who's out there producing, taking his team to the divisional playoff. And I wonder, are they kind of glancing over and just getting a little bit of buyer's remorse because their guy just really hasn't been on the field helping them in the last few years. And you're watching a guy who you cast off win a playoff game and look great in that fashion. It just kind of makes you wonder right now, are there just a little bit of regrets for that
And
trade?
the defense he has in Tampa Bay is nowhere near what Cleveland's
But
is.
yeah. Well, they have guys.
So
who,
is he now he's got Mike Evans to throw to and Chris Godwin, so that probably makes a big difference. But still, he's winning.
Yeah, he is. So
he's also playing in the worst division. So
hey, man, you got it done, right? So, hey, look, this show went really fast, right? So we have to get up out of here. That's been Sports Tonight for a Wednesday. Lee, always great when we can get in here and do this, right?
Yep.
Look,
always.
we have a couple more shows the rest of the week, so I'm sure we'll revisit some more of these topics as the week goes along. But for everybody, have a great rest of your Wednesday and bundle up. It's cold.